Yeah. So lowlights, Benioff is one, and I'll talk about that in a second. Executive turnover is a big one for me. In the last 3 months, I think one of these was before that, several high-ranking executives have left the company. Here are the ones I know of. Co-CEO Brett Taylor, that's probably the biggest one, and it's kind of a weird departure because either they did a really good job showing to the public that there wasn't any animosity and that Brett Taylor just kind of wanted to build his own business, um, or that was the case that he just wanted to kind of build his own business from scratch. So he left. Slack CEO Stuart Butterfield left. Tableau CEO Mark Nelson has left. The CTO.
Yeah, and I mentioned I got it wrong earlier. I said the Tableau CEO left a little earlier. That was incorrect. I don't know what I was reading the other day. He left in December of 2022.
So I guess all of these were in the last 3 months. CTO of security left. Cybersecurity executive vice president left. It seems like there was a ton of people leaving. Maybe this was because they knew layoffs were coming and didn't want to have to be a part of that. They also laid off 7,000 people. That's probably more of it's probably better if you're trying to optimize for profits here, but that might have had to do with the executive sort of exodus. Second one, Benioff. I've got a quote from the Financial Times here. Benioff has long cultivated close relationships with a number of high-profile figures to help further the company, but the fondness for surrounding himself with celebrities, including on corporate business, has also raised concerns. According to one person familiar with the company, both musician will.i.am and actor Matthew McConaughey are frequently involved in strategy discussions at the company, distracting from normal business. An outsider who has attended internal Salesforce meetings also expressed surprise at bumping into celebrities in high-level corporate discussions. That's a huge red flag. And I'll take it a step further. They've got this Salesforce Plus thing, which, if you have no idea what that is, don't worry, you're not the only one. Salesforce Plus is a new streaming service for live experiences and original content series. I think this is their attempt probably at trying to... Okay, right now it seems like whatever, it's not that big of a deal. It's probably a bunch of speeches from I don't know, important business figures, that kind of thing that they just put online. My concern is that Benioff's so obsessed with trying to be a celebrity and surrounding himself with celebrities that he tries to make this like a Prime Video, that he starts pouring money into actual content and wants to be in that entertainment circle.
Yeah, it's not going to happen now, though.
No way
it's happening now. But yeah, that is, yeah, I mean, that's just a complete waste of money. There's other stuff. If you have celebrities on, if you're getting actors and musicians in your board meeting and you're not a music label or media company, you're an enterprise software company, that makes you uninvestable with that current executive team.
That's the other thing. If I ask the average person below the age of 20, have you heard of, people are like, well, why can't this work? They got the money to throw it at it. No one knows. This is a business to business company. Consumers, at least when Amazon did it, which you can question.
Well, it's successful, clearly. I mean, maybe not from a profit standpoint, but it's been successful from a user standpoint.
Yeah, I think it helps with their consumer business because people know what Amazon is. I think the average person below the age of 20 doesn't know what Salesforce is.
Yeah, that stuff is just a complete. It's red flag after red flag with this executive team, which is so sad because the business is out of this world good.
I think they're a little, maybe it's just Benioff. I think they're a little self-obsessed and maybe overstate the influence they think they have.
Yeah.
They think their influence is larger than it really is.
Yeah. All right. My highlights, again, track record growth, like you mentioned, Ryan, so good. 26.5% gross profit per share growth since 2005. I can guarantee without even looking it up that it's better than almost every other company in the world. Plus, there is still looks to be a clear path to growth in all of its end markets this decade. I wouldn't be surprised if 7 to 8 years from now, their revenue number is double. Second one, there are clear competitive advantages, which I think feeds back in on the growth. It generally comes down to switching costs. The core ones in my mind are kind of like Microsoft Excel. I know I mentioned a little bit of a pushback on how the sales team isn't going to be something that you snap your fingers and the whole business collapse, but it's still vital for keeping a business growing a lot of the times if you have an outbound sales staff. And then they also have the competitive advantages within the bundling, which is a nice little addition. I think along with their industry tailwinds, this should give them a combination of industry tailwinds and pricing power whenever they really need it. They're not going to be able to pull a doubling of prices overnight, but they can definitely go along with inflation, if not more. Lowlights, though, wasteful spending. Like you talked about, Ryan, they have, Benioff has a chief of staff. It's just not like, that's just a huge red flag. There's Dreamforce, which I know I didn't watch any of that, but I couldn't do it. They have all the real estate.
Matthew McConaughey speaks at it.
Yeah, I remember seeing they had Dave Grohl as one of the musicians there. That's got to be one of the most expensive artists to get in the world right now. So great, that's great. The real estate leases, they're huge and timed that pretty poorly. Salesforce Plus, I'm only naming a few, and don't even get us started on the acquisitions at the highest price plus the strategic investments. There's no reason this company should be just break even on an operating income level at this point in its life.
I've got it pulled up here. Slack, they bought it 27 times revenue. Tableau, they bought it 12 times revenue. MuleSoft,
that's pretty good. Tableau, that's pretty good for Tableau, given how fast it's growing. But MuleSoft,
well, the revenue acquisition was $1.3 billion for Tableau, and today as of Investor Day, was $2 billion. So it's still 8 times current revenue. The MuleSoft was 23 times revenue. That's actually grown a lot quicker. Their acquisition is 4 times current revenue. So I don't think Slack and Tableau kind of met the growth expectations that maybe investors and buyers in Salesforce's case were expecting.
Yep. All right. Other lowlights for me is the executive turnover. I think of Benioff, I'm going to classify him in the same camp as the Bob Iger of the Howard Schultz, where I get worried about the executive culture they're building. Yes, all of these executives have built long-term growth engines that worked really, really well, or in other cases made great decisions from a capital allocation standpoint, but their executive culture seemed to be ruined. There is uncertainty around the activist here, which could leave Salesforce in a better spot. I think Ryan talked about that, but it also adds a lot of risks that things go poorly, especially if, and all the listeners to this are going to be the individual investors or smaller investors that aren't going to have the influence that the activists would have. Third one is the company culture in general. It's the epitome to me of a San Francisco company that doesn't care about shareholders. And I don't know if you can change that just because Benioff gets ousted. If you are interested in what we mean by that, I would look at the first few pages of the annual report. Here's a quote from there that I thought highlighted, and remember, this is an enterprise software company. This highlights exactly what I mean. Here's the quote. Finally, Salesforce continues to be a global leader in protecting our largest stakeholder, our planet, as we face an urgent climate emergency. Look, that's great, but you are a software company. So yeah, and the other low light, and this is more business, is I worry about a software recession over the next few years. I guess it hasn't shown up yet. It's only been a slowdown and they've kind of grown through it, which is pretty impressive. But the concern is, here's a question I have. Did we have a major software bubble where we had a lot of software companies and a lot of software companies that got pumped up with venture capital that had operating expense lines that ballooned, which a lot of those expenses went to Salesforce because they were hiring huge sales staffs? If so, how much of that did that help Salesforce grow this last decade? I don't know the exact answer to that. I think it's maybe lower than I'm worried about because they are so entrenched within everyone in the Fortune 500, so that this would be only a small part of their business, but still concerns me over the next few years. Is something I'm going to be watching. All right, bull case, Ryan.